Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You may have found me through an ad or through my social media. You may have no idea who I am. It's okay. I will be happy to tell you about it. I'm here tonight doing a talk for film parents. I normally do this talk for film graduates, and I thought this year I'd switch it up a bit. It's been a heavy year of anxiety. So I thought, I mean, in the film business specifically. So I thought I would do a talk specifically for parents, the kind of talk that I wish my parents had when I entered the film industry. If you don't know who I am, I'm Daniela Saioni. I am 55 years old. I've been in the film business for 33 years. People lately have been asking me how I survived and thrived. And I have many answers to that question, some of which will become apparent in today's talk. I'm specifically a script supervisor. I'm also an actor and a screenwriter, and I'm in every union for those professions. I'm an IATSE 873 member here in Toronto, Canada. I have worked in 10 countries as a script supervisor. I am an actor, less frequently than anything else I do, but I value very much my union actor card. And I'm a WGC member. That's the Writers Guild of Canada. And most of the money I make as a writer is as a story consultant, as well as a writing teacher. I train script supervisors, directors, and screenwriters, and I guide many of them to six-figure careers in the film business. By the way, there's many ways to have a six-figure career in the film business, but I hope that I specifically lead my students to satisfying. It's more important to me that you have a happy career, more so than anything else, because as you probably have gleaned by now, the film industry is quite tumultuous even at the best of times, and we have not been experiencing the best of times. So let me start off by saying there's two kinds of film parents, and you can put in the chat which kind do you relate to. The first type of film parent are people who understand the film business, and that's very, very few, because to be in that position, you either have to have been in the film industry yourself, or you have to have really close friends who have been in the film business. So that's one type of parent, and I would say that is a rare type of parent. The second type of film parent is the kind I had, who were wonderful people. My dad is no longer with us. My mother still doesn't understand what I do, but they are well-meaning people who are really against the film industry, mainly because they don't understand it. And for much of our, tell me if you relate to type A or type B, or if you're like a completely different type of parent. You have some understanding of the film business, but you're not sure of the ins and outs. Hopefully, whichever category you fall into as a film parent, I hope to enlighten you, just to give you some guidance as to the size of fan you're walking into. I say that to the kids. I say that to the new people entering the industry. Understand the size of the fan you are walking into, so that you can be better prepared, to face it. That's a quote from my friend who was a huge first AD, now a huge director, and I love that that image. So, okay. So there's also three types of film graduates, by the way. There's a kind of film graduate who is strictly pursuing a creative career, a director, a screenwriter, a cinematographer. If you're the type of parent who has that type of film graduate in your life, it's a harder road, and it requires more support from you, probably, than any other road, is what I'm going to say. But maybe that's because that's the type of because I work with a lot of students and graduates who are like me, who come from immigrant families and everything, that don't necessarily see the value in the arts, and told us maybe to get a real job. For you, if you are in that category, understand that is a very common thing I see in the business even still today. And I want to tell you what happened to me and what's probably going to happen to you if a film graduate with a parent like that, who is the second type of film graduate. Okay, I fell into the second type of film graduate, which is someone who pursues a film crew job. Okay, film crew jobs, and listen, creative jobs are six-figure jobs in the film industry. It's a hard one, six figures, in the sense that it's not steady income. It's not, when they say get a real job, by the way, I've had friends who got real jobs when I graduated in 1991, when I graduated film school, and their jobs disappeared very, over the years. The world has changed. There's no such thing as a reliable job. My sister does have a job like that. She works for the federal government, and I would say she has a steady income, but I would not have wanted her life, right? So the first type of film grad pursues a strictly creative career. The second type of film grad goes into crew, film crew professions, which is, by the way, one of the last good union jobs that exists. So if we'll talk about how they can get on the road to getting in the union, because if you have a film grad who is pursuing union work as a film technician, as anyone on a film crew, which includes what I did, which what I do, which is script supervision, then that is, they're going to quickly surpass you in terms of income. So my parents quickly saw me. They still didn't understand what I did once I graduated film school. Listen, film directors who've been in the business for a long time barely understand what script supervisors do. So I understand if you have a child working in the film business and you still don't understand what they do, especially if they're a script supervisor. But within the first 2 to 3 years in a career, in any film career, whether it's creative or going into a film technician role, are going to be tumultuous because it's going to start out non-union. And some countries don't even have unions. So wherever you're tuning in from, if you're in Europe, there are not even unions. There's Spec2 in the UK, which works slightly differently from our unions, but at least it's some sort of an organization that helps guide, fees. But as someone who teaches film students in 28 countries, I can tell you there's no uniformity outside of North American union rates in terms of a steady kind of a fee that you can kind of bank on as a minimum fee. So the first 2 to 3 years out the gate are going to probably be tumultuous on a financial level, and I'll give you guys tips to help survive that, to help your kids survive that, and to help you survive that, because I know you're probably worried if you've watched any of the news about what's been going on in the film industry worldwide. You're probably like, what has my child gotten themselves into? So for me in 1991, I graduated in a world recession that didn't really pick up again till 1994. So the first 3 years of my career were certainly tumultuous. But by 1994, I had surpassed both my parents' incomes put together. I had paid back my student loans, and I had backpacked through Europe all on my own money and put 10 grand away in the bank towards an RSP. I was 24 going on 25 at that time. So I want you to understand that it's not always going to be like that. Okay. And I want you to understand that the film business, if you don't know already, goes up and down like this. So part of the supportive role you can play as a parent, if you have a kid in either category, the creative or the film technician, is to brace yourself for these lean times and figure out how you can support your child emotionally and financially, maybe if you have the means. A lot of people I know at various times of their film careers have had to move back in with their parents. Listen, we know it's like that in every industry, right? It's not just the film business, but the film business is a particularly fickle mistress. So sometimes it'll be so crazy that your kids will be working so much that you won't see them enough. And I'll explain about the lifestyle a bit more too. But then some years are going to be so lean. We've just gone through 2 or 3 of the hardest years in the history of the film business, to be frank, between COVID strikes and post-strike anxiety and restructuring of major corporations. The entire film industry is undergoing a complete overhaul. So the talks that I normally give every year to film grads to prepare them for the film industry, we actually don't know the exact size of the fan we're walking into this time. But what I can tell you is that the film industry always bounces back. Film and television become extremely necessary in the hard times. So during the Great Depression, the only industry making money, really one of the few, was the film business, because people need a diversion and a distraction. With all the restructuring that we're seeing with the studios, what's going to happen probably is we're going to see fewer and fewer. I mean, and we don't know for sure, but we'll be seeing fewer and fewer of these blockbuster movies and more indie films and smaller budget films. That shouldn't affect the fact that your film graduate offspring will be working, and they'll probably be working and making really good money. The third type of film graduate, also like me, I guess I fall into the second or third. When I entered the industry, I thought I was the second type, who was pursuing a union technician's job. What I discovered later in life is that I was actually the third type of, and it's because I had the kind of parents who were really not supporting a creative career. I really wanted a creative career, so hence my writing and acting work that I now do, that I allowed myself to do later in life. But I went through it via the union route. So via being a script supervisor, that opened my eyes to the other jobs that I kind of really wanted to do. And now, even though I do not have aspirations to direct, I have coached many, many of my script supervision students into a directing career, because script supervision is one of the few crew positions that can actually lead you to a directing career if you strategize it properly. On this channel, I have a talk called why script supervision is a path to directing, and I give many examples. And there's even more examples since I did that talk, because that talk was from 4 years ago now, I believe. So we'll talk about strategy, but let's start with the basics first. So rest assured that even though the first 2 to 3 years will be a little bit tumultuous, as your film graduate offspring child will be working their way towards, will be working. As with any job, you have to make connections. You have to make connections that will hire you, and you often make these connections one show at a time. So it does take, there's a little bit of startup time. There's also often I see this where people graduate film school and they actually don't know which path they want to take. You might not, people may, in film school, they kind of groom you to be a director in many cases. When I was in school, they really dissuaded the women from being a director because they could still say things like that in the 80s. But that's not the case anymore. So if your child is strategizing, or if you're the film graduate watching and you want to strategize your way to directing, I think there's two fast track ways to go. One is to actually start making films. If you have the means, and the means, you don't even have to spend a lot of money, but keep making films. That's what I would say is one of the fastest ways to directing, is actually, because I know people who have said, back when I was growing up, when I was in my 20s and 30s, you still had to buy film, which was really expensive. Everything was much more expensive and less accessible to everybody. So it was really an ordeal to make a film. I think I've only made, I'm not, I've only made two films. I'm not someone who had the ambition to direct, but I certainly have the capability and the ideas and everything. I could have probably made more films. But the people coming up, if you're going to work your way up through a crew position, that's the other way, so that you have a steady income while you're working your way up to directing. Pick something that will pay very well. All the film crew, once you're in a union, once you work your way out of the non-union world, for countries that have unions, for countries that don't have unions, you work your way up from lower budget to tier A kind of things, from maybe from indie films to television. If you're very lucky and you have a film parent, and you're a film parent who can help your children somehow with your connections, do it. Nepotism exists. It's not, you're not necessarily doing your child a disservice by helping them with your connections, but it's not, most of us don't have those connections when we're entering the film business, and it's still possible to have a happy and lucrative career, despite all the ugly parts of the film business that I will also elaborate on today. If you have not yet had the talk with your kids about money, for God's sakes, do it now. My parents never had the talk with me about money. In fact, money was always a negative topic. So meaning, if you have been framing for years things, instilling things in your kids about money, like money doesn't grow on trees, you have to work hard for money, money is the root of all evil. Any of these things actually will block a person from achieving their true wealth. I only know this now as an entrepreneur. It took me a lot of self-reflection to realize my parents meant well with statements like that, but they didn't actually help me when I faced my first six-figure year because they never taught me about savings and investment. So my first six-figure year, I was a kid. I was 24. Your kids are gonna, I've had students who've had their first six-figure year, their first year of script supervising, which is possible because with most film jobs, you have to work your way up to a department head. But if you are a department head when you enter the industry, which is what script supervisors are, which is what cinematographers are, which is what camera operators are, which is what a key grip you'll see interviews on my channel with a key grip and an electrician who became a gaffer very, very early in their careers. It can happen that way. The wave of work is about to turn, the tide is about to turn back to the upper part of the hill because we've been in the low part of the wave for so many years. So we're going to see a lot of people have retired. A lot of my contemporaries have retired or are about to retire, leaving a lot of room open for the new generation, which is great, which is how it always works. But that means a lot of them are going to be faced with which, listen, is not necessarily a curse, faced with some sudden six-figure earnings. I came from a very poor background. I had working class parents who never talked to me about money. So this is the first challenge we face when we have our first six-figure year. I mean, luckily, I did put some money away. I did pay off my student loans. How I did all that my third year in is I got a show called Tech War. I know, terrible. It's one of the worst shows. But no one wanted the job. So that was my first union TV job as a department head. I was 24 years old and I made six figures. This is not an uncommon story. The new people will get the work that nobody else wants and yet is very high paying. You'll hear people I interview about their careers have similar stories. If you don't have the talk with your kids about saving and investments, they may end up squandering their money. I've squandered my money many times. I mean, is it squandering? I spent all my money on travel and food and like luxuries that I never had growing up because I grew up very working class. That's not necessarily the smartest choice because here I am in my 50s renting. I have a sizable, I love my place. I don't mind renting actually, but I envy the people who were smart enough to like buy a home with all the money they were able to make in their 20s. Because the thing about being in your 20s, and I know not every film grad is in their 20s, but a lot of them are, is that you still have the energy to work more hours. And we're going to talk about that because it's not actually healthy to work the kind of schedules we work in the film business in North America. This year, I was lucky enough to work in Rome and Cinecittà on a feature, and I got to experience and I've experienced it before I only experience it when I'm outside of North America making movies, and that is working 10 hours a day or less. That's how they make movies in much of the world, not in North America. In North America, if you're not aware, our hours start at 12-hour days. Basically, we work 12-hour days, and then there's overtime beyond that. The longest days I've ever worked are 24-hour days. True story. I'll often ask people, "What's your longest day?" Raise your hand if you've worked a 24-hour day. I've worked two days like that. I've worked countless 16-hour days, but usually it's 12 to 14 hours. None of that is healthy. You can tolerate that more when you're in your 20s, but it starts to wear on a body. And I don't want to scare anybody. I just want people to strategize how they're going to survive and thrive in the film industry. Because despite some of the horrible things I'm going to say, it's a great job. It's one of the last great union jobs. It's creatively fulfilling, even if you never pursue a creative position in the industry. But to survive and thrive, you really have to strategize and you have to not forget about your health. So there's a talk on this channel called In Praise of the 8 to 10 hour shoot day. And that talks about the difference in lifestyle between working on film sets in Europe versus North America. And if you watch to the end of that talk, I did an informal study of all the obituaries in the IATSE 873 because I noticed that a lot of my friends were dying young, people who started in the film business with me. There's someone who just died yesterday in Toronto who was a camera operator that was well-loved and well-known in my age group. And that story happens too often. And he died of cancer. There's lots of deaths from cancer. I won't even say some of the things because YouTube will bleep it out and not let me release this video. But some pretty dark things happen to film technicians because of, I think it's the lifestyle of working so many hours in a week. We basically work double the amount of hours as a regular person in a week, and we work something called fratter days, which if you haven't heard the term fratter day, as a film parent, a fratter day is when you end up starting your shift on a Friday at 6 p.m. and you get home on a Saturday at like 8 a.m. And that is unfortunately a very real way of life as part of the lifestyle of being a film technician, also being a director. But directors have a different structure to their year. They have spent part of their year in development, creation, they raise money, or they get hired on a job, they work on set for an intense amount of time. And when directors are on set, it's all consuming. For the film crew, they're on set a lot more than the directors, and it's also all consuming. So pick your poison. The directors have fewer days on set. They have the potential to make a lot more money. Same with the writers, and same with the cinematographers. But people who work on set and to pursue their creative dreams, they have to take even more care, because there is the temptation to work nonstop and to work yourself into the ground, literally. So if you watch that video, I calculated that the average age of death for a film technician in Toronto is 58 and a half years old. And someone independently of me did the same study with her union local in Vancouver, and her number was 59 and a half years old. So this is not to be taken lightly. This is a wake-up call to all of us to sort of not work ourselves into the ground, to enjoy the benefits. Listen, when you're pulling in a 20,000 a month as a department head, which is what I pull in as a department head, you don't have to work 12 months. So how I have personally been able to survive and thrive is to work 6 months a year whenever I can, not to push it. And listen, I have a wonderful life that way, in the sense that I use the other 6 months to pursue my creativity. You can use your other 6 months to spend family time, because there are some very, very real things. Again, I hope I'm not scaring people. I'll give you guys a resource at the end of this. I have something I teach my script supervisors. How it's a little mini course called "How to Maintain Work-Life Balance While Enjoying Your Six-Figure Career," and it's like a self-assessment checklist where I get people to assess, health, wealth, like what you need to put together in order to survive your next show. Because if you're going into a 6 to 9 month TV series, you probably want to put a team in place. So for me, everyone's going to have a different thing of what that means. People raising families, part of their team might be a nanny. People who have pets, part of their team might be a dog walker. I need a maid. I'm a single person, so I need a maid. I have an accountant. I need to book massages. Like, you have to make time for self-care. You have to make that a priority when you're in the film business. The good news is you'll be able to afford it once you hit the union level or the tier A level, or even the tier B level. Listen, it plays tier, even if you're not on the top shows in the world, you can make a real, like Tech War was not a tier A, and I still made my 6 figures in my 3rd year as a script supervisor. Like I said, I have students, alumni, making that in their 1st year, because anything is possible in film. I'll speak more to the creatives in a sec, the parents of creatives. Definitely have the talk about money. I knew someone who was not in the film business, who I dated, and he told me he had millions in the bank by the age of like 35. I said, "How did you do that?" He said, "When I was 15, my parents taught me about compound interest." Of course, he was not from working class parents, but and he had literally millions in the bank by the age of 35. By the age of 35, I was kind of burnt out from the film business. I'm still in it, by the way, but the only way I was able to survive for so long was that's around the age I started to restructure my life to make time for priorities, because at that point I was divorced. By the way, don't be scared. It's just an anecdotal stat, but 95% of our union local members are divorced. I don't want to scare people. It's pretty common that film people get more divorced than other people, and the reason is we're never home. So there's a term called an IATSE widow. So that is when your husband or wife is never home because they're always on set. Like I said, if you're working Saturdays, the unhealthy part is not only the length of our days, but the fact that on a Monday, our call time might be 6 a.m. and on a Friday of that same week, our call time, and that's the time that we have to show up to work, is 6 p.m. So it can ruin your circadian rhythm. So do everything you can to protect that. You can choose your shows wisely. I tend not to choose shows that shoot at night, but there's always a little bit of night work in every show. I tend to really choose my projects wisely. As a department head, you can, but not everyone starts as a department head. Listen, some people encourage their kids to start out as production assistants, which is fair, but it's low paid work for long hours, and it may or may not lead them, it may lead them to opportunity for sure. The more specific they can get to what they want to do, the sooner they'll work their way up to department head. And if you're in a job like mine, there's very few. I'm trying to think of other examples of roles where you start work as a department head. And listen, the job that I do, the job that I teach as script supervision, I teach it because it's not a learn on the job situation. You can, but it's a really steep learning curve. You're expected to go to set knowing a very complex job. And I have all kinds of videos about it on this channel. If you check my script supervision playlist, I certainly know how to get people there. That's exactly what I teach is how my program gets people from not knowing anything about the role to working on set as a department head. But it was very necessary to create something like that because the alternate was to have people spending years on the learning curve of being a script supervisor. In the UK and in certain countries, there is the opportunity to shadow script supervisors while working in a position called assistant script supervisors. It is something we are fighting for in North America, and we may actually achieve. But until we get that in North America, there's no working your way up in the script department. And even I have the most students in the world in the UK at this point, and even though they have the assistant script supervisor position, people are looking for trained people to put in those positions. So just food for thought. But you can work your way up. Like if you see my interview with Rico or Scotty, like the key grip, and they talked about how they were seconds and thirds who worked their way up to department head in an astoundingly fast period of time in the late 80s. Well, in Rico's case, in the late 80s, and in Scotty's case, in the 90s, where they were able to, just because of the nature of the way, they caught this wave of film production that was happening in Rico's case as a result of cable television. And in Scotty's case, it was the same as my case, the return to work after a long recession. Suddenly we were getting promoted very quickly. So it is possible, even if you're a student or your child or a graduate, your graduate, maybe that's the best way to put it, is not necessarily wanting to be something like a script supervisor. If they are a director, do your best and try to not crush their dreams. I'm telling you, the richest people I know and the happiest people I know pursued their writing careers. And that's in Canada. It's a little bit harder in the US, believe it or not. There's more work in the US for writers, and many people have happy writing careers in the US. But the few people that were brave enough in Canada that I knew to pursue their writing careers, it paid off like tenfold. It was the best thing. It's harder now. I would say it's harder now. But without familial support for having a creative dream and a vision, it's really hard. So I think of people who really made it. I read an interview by was it Gabriela Sigismondi? She was one of the first sort of music video directors to really, really hit. And I read an interview with her where she said her parents were artists and they were so supportive of her dream. And I was so envious. I was like, there are parents like that. Wow, that must be great, because then you're nurturing your child to have what they see for themselves, what they want. And you think it's a risk. My parents still think script supervision was a risk, if not a risk at all. Like, crew positions are not a risk. There's always work. The risk is those in between years. And so you got to, if they don't already know, have the talk with them to save their money so they're not like burning out, so they're not broke by the time the next sort of lull in the film industry happens. I trained myself to use those lulls to get to write more scripts, to get more creative, to teach more classes. I love teaching. That's, for me, teaching is creative. But like, whatever floats their boat, whatever keeps them happy, maybe focus on family, like making, if they want a family. That was never me, but there's a lot of people who do want kids and all that. So use those lulls in the film business as a blessing, as a time to pursue your creative goals, or schedule those lulls, because we've seen, until the sort of decline of work in the film business these past 3 years, we saw 10 years of like way too much work, like a wall of work hitting us, right? And it can be hard. You can fall into the trap of thinking, if I say no, I'm going to be out, I'm going to not get another. That's not true. There's so much work, and the work does spread out. I've worked in 10 countries for a reason. I don't limit myself to the city I live in. A, I love to travel, but B, like, the work is, this is a global industry. And if you have any way to help your children work in Europe, because I have a European passport, because at one point I said to my parents, I think I'm going to need my European passport, just in case I need to work over there. And it has come in really handy. My sister didn't think to do that. Of course, she doesn't need it for her job because she's in a government job here, but I ended up making full use of that. And I'm thankful that I thought of it. But if you can think of it, if there's a way that you have a way for your child to have a UK passport or a US passport, encourage that, because it will just open up the opportunities for them, especially if they're going to direct, and especially if like a US passport is an option, or if they're going to act, or if they're going to write. But it really helps for film crews. Film crews as well. I've certainly been permitted to work in the United States. It would have been much easier if production didn't have to pay thousands of dollars just to bring me in to work in the US. But so anything you can do to help your kids that way is going to give them, just open up even more doors for them, whether they're crew or whether they're creative. Okay. And I said on my notes, expect the unexpected. It's true. Things shift like this in the business, right? So there was, like I said, I've had students who have had to move back in with their parents for a period of time to survive the downturn in the industry. Not every parent has the ability to help their children by letting them stay with them, but I had to do that once too. Was it after my divorce, or? But there was a period of time for like 2 years that I moved back home as an adult, and I've destigmatized the shame of it, because it's one of the many survival things. So teach them how to invest and save. Get passive streams of income. I didn't learn that until 5 years ago, guys. I wish I knew what I know now about passive income, which is why I have a whole creative entrepreneurship playlist on this channel, because there's many, many ways to make money online. And I obviously I teach a lot of courses. That's my main way, but I have other ways too. Get them to explore. Yeah, I hesitate to call it a side hustle, just other avenues of income, because they're going to need them at certain points in their career. But encourage them to choose things that don't compromise, the fact that they will need to take film jobs. If I did Suits oh yeah, I never told you guys my credits. If you don't know, I did some pretty big shows. I did 4 seasons of Suits. 4 seasons of Soul Food, the series, and I've done a lot of movies, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Shazam. Like, I've done a huge, impressive body of work. And I had a lot of strategy along the way, and I haven't burnt out yet, but there have been times that I came close and I had to keep reevaluating how many shows am I going to take. So if you look at my resume, hopefully, by the way, you did something smart. And when you saw this ad, if you saw it as an ad, you went, who the hell is Daniela Saioni? And I hope you looked me up on IMDb to see if I was legit. Okay. Because for those who don't know, imdb.com, the Internet Movie Database, is a way to suss out if people are legit. So there's a lot of people, who might be approaching your director graduate. I'm trying to use the right word. Your director of film graduate or your film crew graduate. There might be people approaching them for work, and there's a lot of scams going. Oddly, these scams started in the past few years, so you want to make sure people are legit. It's really, really hard to fake an IMDb profile. Those credits have to be vetted and submitted by production. You can submit your own credits too, but they're vetted. So one good way to make sure somebody is legit who is dealing with your offspring is IMDb. And I have the pro version of IMDb, so I can always really, and listen, there are certain things that are not listed on IMDb that might very well be legit. Just do some research. And this is for the film graduates as much as it is for the parents. So I hope you did check me out and realize that I am someone who has legitimately been through stuff, who actually can hopefully give you some helpful advice. By the way, if you have questions as I'm talking, type them in the chat. I will be happy to address them. Finding those early jobs is going to be tricky, okay? And it's going to feel potentially hard. Some jobs will require further training. So if they want to go into the electric department, they're going to have to get certain certifications. If they want to be a script supervisor or anything like that, a focus puller, anything that has specialized skills that are not taught in film school. And some of these are taught on a light level in film school, but it behooves you to get certified, or in the case of electrics, there's certain things you have to do to get certified. Some further training will be required, and that's just how it is. So in those early years, your offspring might be, does offspring sound weird? Your child, your young ones, will be undergoing further training, and they're going to need support for that, either financial or emotional, or just like the pressure from parents saying, are you done with the film business yet? Or is it, it comes too soon. Like they don't believe the dream. A lot of you, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's your case, but some of you watching may not have even supported your child's intention to go into film school. That was very much my case. I had to save up all the money. I worked from the age of 13 because my dad said he would not ever pay a penny for me to go to film school. So from the age of 13, I was saving up my tuition and saving up the money. I had to work 3 jobs to make my movie in film school. Hopefully you're not that kind of parent, but I also understand in a way if you are. He said he was just trying to protect me. I don't know what he was trying to protect me from, my own dreams, maybe. I don't know. But I wish, they could have a crystal ball and see how fulfilling a film career really, really can be and really is. I've seen some incredible things. I've gotten to experience a lot of the world that I never would have experienced from a cubicle, from any kind of a desk job. Well, not that I don't think I would have pursued a desk job, but, you know, um, sometimes parents think they're protecting us, but they're saving us from, stopping us from living our lives. So you have to understand, anyone who pursues a film degree and a film career probably doesn't have the kind of mind and soul that would thrive at a desk job. So do your best, even if you don't understand their world, to understand that that's who they are and that's where they need to be. There are some pitfalls. Obviously, besides the health thing and the hours away from family that can destroy families, and that's something very real that you can strategize against by not working all year and burning yourself out, and making your spouse an IATSE widow, making time for, having your children, advising them to make time for their family if that's a priority for them, or for their travel, or for their writing or directing, like whatever the dream is that makes them happy and makes them fulfilled as people. Okay. I told you what a Fratter was. On that note, driving home can be dangerous. And this is sounds so terrible, but it's true. But when you work 16 hours, by the way, I don't know how to drive. I've never gotten my license. I am 55 years old. I will never get my license. And I'm very glad about it, because it's probably saved my life. I don't have the greatest vision. I'm somehow a script supervisor who has to keep the continuity in a film, but I don't have the greatest vision. And after a 16-hour day, I'm silly putty. I have no ability to do anything, let alone drive home. And script supervisors have an extra hour of work that they do at home after that. So for my entire career, I would negotiate either for a drive home, which less and less productions do now. I still try to get that. And some productions do say yes, but or arrange a ride with a fellow crew member, or Uber or taxi home. Um, all any of the above. It's one of the things that I can write off as a work expense. I mean, it depends, right? Some of your kids will be corporations, and some of them will not be corporations. So, or they'll be self-employed. In Canada, you have to be either self-employed or an employee out to work in film. You can be self-employed on indie things, but I would greatly encourage you to encourage your kids to incorporate. I first incorporated in 1994, that first six-figure year I had. And I don't regret it for one single second. Don't even wait till the moment that you hit 100,000 a year in income. Start to do it when you're at the $60,000 mark. Is very worth it to incorporate in this business. And then you can do things like write off your taxis or Ubers home. Driving home is very dangerous. I still don't know how and why people choose to do that. And listen, I get it. I live in a city. Some people live in the country. I get it, but just consider that if there's any way you could plan for not driving home after a 16-hour day. Now, more and more productions have said that after 15 hours, you're entitled to a hotel, etc. But just think about that. It's not the greatest. You've heard more than once in the news how people die or get into very serious accidents driving home after a shift in film. Time off is a necessary requirement for a chunk of the year due to the length of our work days and the intensity of our work. So if your kid is off for 3 months, don't pressure them about going back to work right away. They'll get there. They will get there. Just really encourage them to plan those breaks for themselves. And I do know people that work all year. I still don't know how they do it. And of course, they're pulling in like $250,000 a year. I still not worth it to me. That 50 dead by 60 kind of thing it really affects me. I don't want to be that person. Yeah, I think I already said don't crush their dreams. Parents sometimes can't help. I know you're like, it's my job to crush their dreams. I'm their parent. So let me tell you about how unions work. It's a little bit of a journey to get into a union. That's why it takes an average of 3 years. Your kid won't be in a union unless they were like some friends of mine whose parents were both in unions. And I jokingly say they were born with a union card in their hand because they were able to get into the union at a very young age due to the very real thing of nepotism. But hey, work every angle you have. This is a hard business. So if you are able to get your child into a union, do that. It will protect them. It will get them some benefits. In the US, there's more benefits for IATSE workers in the US than Canada, but we certainly have several benefits in Canada. And there are other film unions besides IATSE. There's NABET and ACFC in Canada. It will give them a health plan. It will get them a 401k or an RSP, as we call it in Canada. And in the US, they'll also get a pension. Very few good union jobs like that exist in the world. So the goal, if your child is a film technician or if they're a director, is to get into a union. So directors, figure out what the minimum requirement is to enter the Directors Guild of America or the Directors Guild of Canada, and strategize your work so that you have, like, I think in Canada, it's 70 hours of distributed content. So if you make one feature and it gets distribution, there you go. So I know one of my students did it when she was 21. So it is all possible nowadays. Figure out what the path to union representation is, and it will serve you better in the long run because you'll have benefits earlier. And for film technicians, it's different in every union local. So do the research, whether you're the graduate or the parent, as to what union locals require. How many hours do they require? Some of them are less specific. Like in Toronto, to be a script supervisor, they look at how many long form credits you have. There's not a specific number. It just depends on how many people are applying that year, how busy it is. But, in some union locals, it'll say you need 100 days, 100 paid days on film sets, and you need to provide proof of that. Some jobs will have trade tests, and that hence the further training that some jobs require for safety reasons and just for the specificity of the job reasons, right? Unions basically require basically ensure for producers that the technicians can do the jobs. So to get into a union, you have to prove you have credits. And how do you get those credits and those you can get the certifications from different people in different organizations, but to get the credits, you're often starting out in an indie kind of world, which is the Wild West. There's a thing, if you watch the panel on my YouTube channel called The Vertical Wave, it talks about these new vertical productions, which is a brand new form of format and work that is out there. It's generally low paid, but so are some indie films. And it's been a way for some people to get their paid days on set and to get their experience. But be careful if you're the graduate or the parents, just warn them, don't get pigeonholed into one thing, meaning don't get pigeonholed into the indie world. Don't get pigeonholed into verticals. Do it, get the experience, get the connections, and also try, the more people you end up meeting, the more different people you work for. It is good to get in with a group that grows together. Sometimes producers in the indie world grow together. Like I saw Sarah Polley grow her career because she did start with a very indie crew, even though she was already famous. And her crew grew with her, and she promoted from the crew that supported her when she was an indie filmmaker. That's great. But also another strategy is to never let people pigeonhole you. I always went back and forth from TV to film because I never wanted people to pigeonhole me as one or the other. And thankfully I didn't. TV used to be seen as the lesser medium. Now it's equal or even surpassed film in many ways. So if someone can't say to me, oh, you're not a TV person, because I very much am. I've done hundreds of hours, even though I very much am a feature film person who does very big movies as well. Yes. So figure out what the requirements are, strategize, get your days, get in with people who are going to hire you, try different formats, and hopefully by around the 3-year mark, you'll have enough to join one of the union locals in your area. And when you are working, it doesn't end there. When you're working in a union, you're still always negotiating all the minimum rate. Now you have minimum rates and conditions. You have a minimum rate of pay, and people think that that's the rate. That's the minimum. You can negotiate above that, especially if you're a department head. So definitely know that. And then you start to do things like strategize which projects you can take. And again, more for department heads than like the third grip. The third grip is just going to be happy working with the best grip in the city, who's going to give them, going to teach them things that they're going to take with them when they move up the ladder to become key grip. But if you are someone who is a department head, you can carve your own career by the types of projects you choose. I always talk about the big choice for me that I made a choice once to work on a film called My Big Fat Greek Wedding over other films that were paying a lot more. But I could see the future potential of that project when I read the script. As script supervisors, we get to read the script before our interview. And I went, oh my God, this film is going to change things for in cinema, and it really did in many ways, and it's going to change things for me if I work on it. And making choices about the kinds of projects you work on, if you're a department head or if you're this goes for creatives. If you're a director, I understand how sometimes it's like, well, but the only gig was this commercial for a vacuum. I get it, right? Do it, get the experience, get the money. But if you have the choice, or if you can make the choice, if you can guide your way to the more interesting, or make that vacuum cleaner commercial the most creative thing, or the thing that pleases the clients and also puts something great on your portfolio, then everybody wins, right? But you got to strategize the types of projects you work on, and then how you make that a creative showpiece for you if you're a creative, or if you're a crew member who, like me, after Big Fat Greek Wedding, realized I want to make my name as a comedy script supervisor, which later in life became me being a comedy screenwriter and a stand-up comic and all of that. Like, it opened every door for me in many ways. So choose your projects wisely and negotiate wisely. The union rates are minimums. save your money. Someone said to me once, dress above your station. You can only do that in certain jobs because we do have to wear, steel-toed boots, and there's certain many dangerous workplace things that we have to. But a commercial producer who won this award said, my parents always told me to dress above my station, and she used to wear, as a production assistant, very like finely tailored clothes on set, and she was soon a producer because people saw her. And this is very old timey advice, but I always love that. I still, when I can, when we're in studio, I will wear dresses, and just I will try to. And my favorite director that I work with is Paul Feig, who of course wears 3-piece suits to set, different ones every day. So I like that advice in a way. If you don't, if you are the third type of, if your child or you are the third type of film technician, which is the technician who also has a creative dream, do not forget to be creative for part of the year. Make a film, write a script, do what you can to keep that dream going. Just don't forget about it. The danger of making all this money and being tired from all these hours worked is that you forget your dreams and you stop making films. I know plenty of people who did that. It took me actually, I don't know, 25 years before I finished a script to the point where it started to win awards and stuff. And I realized, oh, I should maybe keep doing this. And then I was able to help other people do that as I began. I have the kind of crazy where once you learn how to do something, it's your compulsion to teach it. So I started teaching script supervision in 1995, like 4 years into my career. I started training creative entrepreneurs in the same year that I became a creative entrepreneur, because when I crack the code to something, my first instinct is to teach it. So I started teaching writers in 2012 when I cracked my own code into like how I could write faster and stronger scripts. So you'll see that across my career, but I'm telling you, make the time. Just if teaching might be your thing, if that's your calling, also make the time to do that. But it could be whatever it is, make the time to do it. Don't forget about it, just because you're like the best script supervisor, one of the top script supervisors in the world. Don't forget that you're a writer and also an actor, etc. Just using an example. I'm not the top in the world, but you know what I mean. I do have my choice of projects, and that's a very nice position to be in. It doesn't mean I have to work myself into the ground as a result of that. I'm like the rare person who's going to advise against starting as a PA. I just think you're lengthening the amount of time until you're a department head. I would say, unless you want to be a first AD, being a PA to third AD to second AD to first AD, very noble choice, and I think that's great. That's when you start as a PA. Or being an assistant to the producer is a better idea. Meaning, if you don't want to be an AD, that's assistant director. There's a couple of non-union jobs on a film set that are very privileged, even though they pay very low. And that is not a PA, but an assistant to the producer or an assistant to the director, which is different from an assistant director. They're the personal assistant or an assistant to the cast. So these are non-union jobs. They can be very wildly low paid, but you have a level of privilege and access to very powerful people. So if you know you want to write and you can be an assistant to a producer, you can probably get in the writing room through that producer if you do a really good job for them. They're going to want to help you. That's what they know, that those are lowly paid jobs that, I would almost rather advise people to do that rather than start as a PA, unless they very specifically want to be an assistant director. Or if they really don't know what they want to do. It's still if you have any kind of administrative ability and ability to think, to work closely with creative egos, I would say be an assistant to the producer or an assistant to the director before you consider being a generic PA. Just a top tip. It's not a money tip. I mean, in the long run it is, but it's a way to get referrals to some pretty choice jobs in the business. And I've trained plenty of script supervisors who found me that way. They were the assistant to the director or assistant to the cast who were at Video Village. If you don't know, Video Village is where the director and the script supervisor and the DOP sit and the producer sit, as we're creating the movie, as we're shooting the movie. And it's a very privileged position to be in because all the people in power are there, and their assistants can be there. So that's a top tip. That goes for wherever you live. I don't believe there are unionized positions anywhere, but it's something people don't often think of at first. Um, I'm just seeing if I missed anything I wanted to say. Just if you're a parent who's never been self-employed or incorporated or had a business, just understand this is a self-employment lifestyle. Even if you work technically as an employee, which most American shows you're an employee. I heard that people will incorporate in the US and just put their kit fee on their corporation, but it actually is in the United States, in most states, more advantageous to work as an employee. I think it has something to do with your pension and EI. In Canada, it's much more advantageous to be a corporation. So, in general, and these are generalizations, but in general, that's what it is. But ultimately, the lifestyle is one of a freelancer, and that can make parents nervous if they have not experienced that before in any generation of their family. Listen, it's not gonna it's there's gonna be some bumps in the road. The industry goes up and down. I've seen bumps in the road with people with real, quote unquote, real jobs, Joe jobs, regular jobs. So it's not like, it's just a different kind of pain. Every job has pain. This is just a different kind of pain. As long as you can know that and plan for that, learn how to embrace the freelancer, self-employed lifestyle, whether you're the technician or the parent. All right. And make sure I said it earlier, but I'll just reiterate. If you're going into a TV series, you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to be working long hours. Have a team in place for what you need. Have your massages booked. Have your maid come in when, have your dog walker set up, anything you need so that you can just survive and hopefully thrive in the process. Okay. I've been talking for 55 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? You can email me. You know what? Where can I put that? Let me see. So that bit.ly /Saioni, it's a link to my link tree. The link tree has all the courses I offer. If you click on most of them, it'll have my email on how to contact me by email. It's mondocinema@gmail.com, but I just don't like typing it out on YouTube because of all the spam I get. But through any of my course pages, you'll see at the bottom, if you want to book a 20-minute session with me, if you want to talk about any of my programs. I interview people for my Story Editor Studio program for writers. Sometimes people want to talk to me about my script supervision program. Use that email, but you can also use that email just to say, send me the work-life balance document. So I can send you the assessment form that I give my students when I ask them to give themselves an assessment of what they need in order to survive and make a financial plan. Do they need by the way, another member of my team is my financial planner. When you're in a union, you get one of the benefits you get in your group RSP is you get a financial planner as part of that. And that's something I learned about 4 years into my career. And I make full use of that. You don't have to pay extra for that. It's part of your union, your group retirement plan. That's for those who are in a union. If you're not in a union, working with a financial planner and a really good accountant is great. Anyway, just email me for that form. And it's just a self-assessment form that I'll give you for free, or message me if you're interested in any of my programs. This is more of a public service announcement, a talk that I wish my parents had heard when I was graduating film school, even before I entered film school, because boy, oh boy, did they give me a hard time about going to film school. Like I said, within 3 years of graduating, I was making more money than both of my parents combined, so they could stop bugging me about it. But sometimes, if I was off for 6 months in a row, I'd hear it. When are you going back to work? And, they didn't understand the grueling lifestyle. So I hope this has helped anyone who's a film parent. I hope, are there questions? Sorry, I had to switch screens. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. It says I've got one person tuned in. Feel free to ask me anything. Otherwise, you reach out if you want to. And if you're watching this in replay, you reach out if you want to, and let me know if you have any requests for talks you would like me to do. I decided and realized the talks I've been doing over the years for film grads, and also tonight for their parents, would be an interesting book, I think. which I will aim to write within the next 6 months and get it out to you guys. But in the meantime, here it is. All the know the size of the fan you're walking into, know how to strategize a career. I think whatever industry you're entering, you have to have a strategy in order to be to reach the top tiers of it, and also to survive it for so long, whatever it may be. But the film industry is a very specific, fickle beast. So I hope this has helped. I see there are no questions, so I will sign off. Have a great night and don't crush your children's dreams.